Genesis chapter 41. We dreamed a dream in one night, I and he. We dreamed each man according to the interpretation of his dream. And it came to pass as he interpreted to us, so it was. Me he restored unto mine office, and in him he hanged. Let Pharaoh do this. Let him appoint officers over the land, and take up the fifth part of the land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous years. Food shall be for store to the land against the 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, the land that the land perish, not through famine. Number 38. And Pharaoh said unto his servants, can we find such a one as this man, a man in whom the Spirit of God is? When we share today, I want to lift up the thought, the facts about favor, part 6. Facts about favor, part 6. Just to give the Cliff Note versions of where we find ourselves in the text today. We met Joseph a few chapters ago. Joseph is one in whom found hardship and found jealousy amongst his brothers. They devised a plan to have him killed. Having this plan to have him killed, there was one brother by the name of Reuben who spoke up and said, well, let's not kill him. Let's just throw him in a pit. Reuben had in his mind that he would come back and save his brother. And although Reuben was one who should have received the blessing of their father, Jacob. Amen. But although Reuben was the one who should have received the blessing and Joseph received the blessing, Reuben did not allow himself to be driven by jealousy of his younger brother. We covered in the series, The Conspiracy of Calvary, that if there was one recurring theme leading up to the execution of Jesus the Christ, it was that people in his day were jealous of what God was doing through him. And my brothers and sisters, I've come to present to you today that jealousy is a dangerous thing. Once you become jealous of someone, you will become envious of them. And jealousy can soon turn into hatred. You have to, amen, amen. It says the sound of a baby in a church is a sound of life. Amen. So just let them cry, because that means we're still alive. That means we're still alive. Joseph finds himself in a pit, and being found in a pit, the brother said, well, we're not just going to keep him here. We're going to sell him off to the Ishmaelites. The Ishmaelites, who are Jacob's or who are Joseph's cousins somewhere in the family tree, because you know his foreparent Abraham was a rolling stone. That is his foreparent Abraham had a son by the name of what? Ishmael. And Ishmael is, the Ishmaelites are the descendants of that child outside of the marriage from Abraham and Hagar. Joseph finds himself in Ishmaelite captivity. Ishmaelites say, okay, well, we'll just sell him into captivity again. Joseph finds himself in the house of a man by the name of Potiphar. And in being in the house of Potiphar, Joseph is presented with every temptation that man can withstand. That temptation that some of us just fall prey to was a good-looking woman. Amen. Men ain't going to say nothing. I guess I got to stay out here by myself. Amen. But although Potiphar's wife was one in whom was chasing after Joseph, Joseph said, I cannot defile my master. Most of all, I cannot defile my God by being with another man's wife. Since she saw that she could not defile or could not taint the integrity and the character of Joseph, she decided to tell a lie on him. And telling a lie on him, Joseph finds himself that Potiphar had every right to kill Joseph, but Joseph found favor in the sight of God and found favor in the sight of Potiphar, that Potiphar says, well, instead of me killing you, I'm just going to put you in jail. While Joseph is in jail in chapters number 39 and chapters number 40, Joseph encounters two of Pharaoh's lead servants, a butler and a baker. And while they are in prison, the butler and the baker have dreams, and they are troubled by the dreams. And Joseph comes along and says, let me interpret your dreams. Let me just tell you what your dreams mean. And before they put the deal on it, Joseph said, now the only thing I want out of this deal is when you get restored back into your rightful place, that you remember me. When you get back into Pharaoh's house, because he said, the baker, you're going to be killed. And the butler, you're going to be restored. And everything that Pharaoh took away from you, he's going to have to put you back in that spot. And when you get back there, you're going to have the ear of Pharaoh. And Pharaoh's going to have to make some decisions about who he's going to pardon and who he's going to let out of jail. So when you get there, don't forget about a brother. That's all Joseph wants. Just don't, I don't want no cigarettes. I don't want no cars or nothing. I just don't want, y'all don't play with me now. Amen. I don't want nothing in particular. Just remember me. The text opens up in Genesis chapter 41 that the butler got his and he forgot all about Joseph. But the Bible tells us that 2 years have passed, that the butler's been up in Pharaoh's house eating good. The butler has been living large, and he forgot about the promise in which he made unto Joseph. But God has a way. And although it may seem to you that time is being wasted, God has a way and God has an appointed time. And 2 years have passed as we enter the text of Genesis chapter 41, and Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, has a dream. And Pharaoh, this dream just keeps bothering Pharaoh. And he says, I need somebody to come and tell me what this dream means. And Pharaoh gets all of his top magicians, all of his top sorcerers, and he tells them the dream. And none of them jokers could tell him what it meant. That's why you have to be careful of the advice that you get and the folks who you depend on for advice. Because everybody who has the description or looks like they can give you advice, there are some things of God that they can't even touch. But this dream was not a astrology dream dealing with the stars. They wasn't used to this type of dream, because here it is, Pharaoh. He's talking about, I went to sleep last night and I saw 7 fat cows. I saw 7 skinny cows. I kept on dreaming it. It woke me up, and I went back to sleep. And you know how it is when you're having a good dream. You wake up, you think you're going to go back in, and you go on to something else. Y'all have been there, amen. You go on to something else, and Pharaoh thought that, maybe that my dream would change. But God, instead of it changing, it just came at me in another direction. The first dream, I saw 7 fat cows, and I saw 7 skinny cows. And second dream, I saw 7 good ears of corn, and I saw 7 bad ears of corn that had been devoured up. And he says, I need to know what this means. And he gets his homeboys together. Verse number 7. Verse number 7, and 7 thin ears devoured the 7 ranking full ears, and Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. It says when he got up, verse number 8, his spirit was troubled. And Pharaoh, that these advisors, these top-ranked people, that whenever Pharaoh needed something to be interpreted, every time before, they were able to tell Pharaoh exactly what he needed to know. If it was something to deal with the finances of Egypt, they were able to predict it by looking at the stars. That if it was anything about war, they were able to go back and pull up the old war records and tell Pharaoh, this is how you need to fight this battle. But this one thing they couldn't touch. It's one thing that it was only one person in the country of Egypt who could get the job done. And it's something about folks. Something about folks, they put on a good front when you've done something for them, like they don't need you no more. Now, you know folks like that, who you've done something for, and now you didn't ask for anything in immediate return. You just thought that, okay, if I do this for you, when it come time for me needing something, I'm not going to have to go from A to Z with you. Some folks you have to take them back. Some folks you got to help them remember. Now, you wasn't always who you are now. Some folks you just got to do like that. In verse number 9, the text presents unto us that the butler comes to himself and says, Pharaoh, there's a great sin that I have committed. That you remember that time you threw me in jail? What's his name? Gary Coleman. What you talking about? You remember that time you threw me in jail? Now, when I was in jail, there was a young Hebrew boy who told me his story. There was a young Hebrew boy who when me and the baker had a dream, we went to him, and everything that this Hebrew boy told us, it came to pass. That he told me that I was going to be restored, and he told me that in 3 days, once we got back to your kingdom, that you were going to hang the baker. He says, well, now he's a Hebrew boy, and you got to understand that he says Hebrew boy for a reason. Because the Hebrews and the Egyptians weren't the best of friends. And the reason they weren't the best of friends is because they served two different gods. That the Hebrews believed in the one God, the only true and living God, but the Egyptians, they believed in multiple gods. They believed in fertility gods and sun gods. They believed in a whole lot of stuff. But he says, I understand that he may be different, but he's the only one that can get the job done. That when you walk in the favor of God, God will always set it up where folks who counted you out will have to acknowledge what God is doing through you. Now, let me tell you now, they may give you third-degree holy hell before they get to it. And you'll be put in a position, now, do I operate out of a place of compassion or do I operate out of a place of spite to get them back? Reverend Cochran once told me, once he said this, I thought it was, old, seasoned folks. Seasoned folks have a way of saying stuff that you like, they don't know what they talking about. They don't know what they talking about. But after you keep on living, you keep on going to sleep and waking up a few days, you're like, oh, okay, now I know what they were talking about. Reverend Cochran used to have this thing say, when God put your name on a biscuit, can't nobody eat it but you. Now, that's seasoned folks talk. And, who back there, Taylor and Morgan, y'all probably not appreciate that right now, but just get on out there and start paying some light bills. Amen. And you'll say, Mama was right the whole time. That you need to turn off the light when you leave out the room. Amen. That instead of running your heat all winter, go get you a space heater. I'm trying to help us. Amen. Some things you just got to live through in order to appreciate it. That Joseph is one who now, that although he was discounted by his brothers, he was discounted by Potiphar's wife, he was discounted even by some of his jail and cell buddies. And Joseph has spent at least 2 years from the time that the butler has been restored, operating in his gift. And it takes 2 years for his gift to come full circle. And when you walk in the favor of God, know that God will strategically design some stuff for you, that you're the only one that can do it, but do know that God does not operate on a 24-hour time system. that you may think that it's my time now. And God says, no, I got to let you marinate a little while. Some things that if God would have given it to me when I asked him for it, I would have been tore it up. And there's sometimes when you're walking in the favor of God that you will think that time is being wasted. But God says, no, I realize that time is a non-renewable resource. And although you may think that you're wasting time where I have you right now, I'm only getting you ready for what's coming on down the road. Y'all don't hear me, amen. And Joseph teaches us that although it may take some years, some days, some months, and a whole lot of tears, but you can only imagine the feelings of Joseph sitting in that Egyptian jail. That he could have said unto himself that if I would have just kept my mouth closed in the first place, I wouldn't have never got in this fix. That if I would have never said anything about my brothers bowing down to me and my father and mother bowing down to me, if I would have just kept my mouth closed, I wouldn't be in this spot. And he could have entered into a place of bitterness where he decided no longer to operate in the gift in which God had favored him to operate. And my brothers and sisters, I've come to tell you that no matter how close you walk with the Lord, when you walk in the favor of God, all of us will reach that point where we think about throwing in the towel. Now, y'all don't want to be real with me this morning. Amen. Some of us have been in marriages and relationships that from Jump Street, you said, I'm about to leave this joker. There have been some jobs you worked on and said, God, I really don't like this job. So why you still got me here? I really want to do some other things. And God says, I've got you in a holding pattern. And do know if I got you in a holding pattern, I have the power to clear you for landing. There was a point in my ministry where I said, God, you just wasted my time. And I'd be lying to you if I didn't tell you this. The guy says, all this back and forth and rigmarole. I said, God, what are you doing? You get to that point in life. Well, the more you try to do for God, it seems like the more heartache and heartburn you get. But God has a way that when you think about giving up, he shines the light of hope into your situation. He says now, the butler says, I got a man named Joseph. We met him, and everything he said came true. They called Joseph. Joseph being one who was respectable. He said, verse number 14 says, then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him in a hurry. Joseph, where everybody else had to go through the checkout system, they expedited. That's a big word. Expedited. They put a rush order on Joseph and says, Pharaoh has need of him. And when God is working in your life, do know some stuff that other folks had to do, God will fix that thing where you can just bypass. And when you're walking in the favor of God, there are some things that God will speed up because God knows that it's your season and your time. And when it's God's season and God's time in your life, don't you know, now I got in this, I'm going to be transparent with y'all today. There were some things God was doing in my life, a few years ago, and still doing in my life, that I was like, man, I got to kind of go through the process like everybody else, because if I don't go through the process like everybody else, then everybody else is going to be hating on me. And then I had to wake up. And I said, well, whether I go through the process or not, there's still going to be some folks hating on me. And there's no need of me trying to worry about what other folks got to say about what God is doing in my life. I mean, I was wrestling with some stuff, and I had to go talk to my uncle Cuckoo, Reverend Buckman. We call him Uncle Cuckoo. Then the uncle said, Reverend Cuckoo, this is what I'm going through, this is what I'm wrestling with. And he said, Adrian, now, I'm telling you this, and this stuck with me. A whole lot of stuff stick with me every now and then. Every now and then. He said, you don't ever take on another person's problem. Don't ever take on another person's problem. You just operate in what God is doing in your life. And don't worry about what other folks who thought they should have. You don't hear me. Amen. It is Joseph. They go and get Joseph, and Joseph gets ready, hastily out of the dungeon. He shaved himself because, the Bible gives great detail that although Joseph was a Hebrew, he still operated out of character and integrity in a place of respecting others. That Joseph looking like an old, kind of looking like Grady off of Sanford and Son. Y'all remember Grady off Sanford and Son just looking shabby. Just looking shabby. They looking up there, Brother Wilson. That's an inside joke. He's just looking shabby. But Joseph said, Pharaoh needs me. I need to get myself together. Because the Egyptians believed in cleanliness. And Joseph says, well, I got to get myself together. And he changed out his clothes, said I need to take off these prison clothes and get some better looking clothes because I'm going before Pharaoh. Now, I had to throw this in there. Now, some people interpret that particular scripture that Joseph was selling out to the system. Because everybody else, all the other Hebrews walking around looking shabby, looking like slaves. They say Joseph is, they use that verse to say he's selling out, trying to get in good with Pharaoh, but Joseph just acted out of a place of respect. This man calling me to come to his house, I'm not going to walk up in here with no flip-flops and basketball shorts on. If this man invited me to come to his house, I'm going to respect the man's house. Because at the end of the day, he is the king of Egypt. And there'll be some adjustments you have to make in life. And people, in making those adjustments, people will think that you're selling out. I get it on a weekly basis. Sometimes you can't ever do nothing right. You can't ever do nothing right. From the folks you know and the folks who you don't know. Joseph cleans himself up. And he goes and tells Pharaoh. Pharaoh tells him the dream in verse number 15. And Joseph answered Pharaoh saying, it is not in me. God shall give Pharaoh the answer in peace. That when you're walking in the favor of God, God will gift you to do some things that other people can't do. But you can't get the big head about your gift. That Joseph says, I've got the gift to interpret this dream, but I'm aware that it's not me, but it's God working in me that will allow me to tell Pharaoh what the dream means. And even if I tell Pharaoh the dream, I still don't have the power to give him peace. That you have to understand that walking in the gift of God, God will allow you to hop over mountains and skip through valleys. But although God allows you to do some great stuff, you got to realize that the gift is not about you. That's what Paul said over in Corinthians. He said, we have this treasure in earthen vessels so that I won't be glorified, but I'm only the pot. That I'm only the vessel and God is the flower. That I don't care, most folks don't ever say that's a nice flower pot. All they say that's a nice flower. Not realizing that the flower is necessary. The flower pot is necessary, but the glory can't go to the flower pot. That's old folks talk. That's seasoned folks talk. That Joseph says that although I've got the favor of God to do this great thing, it's not about me. That's one thing that's always been my prayer. When I was getting ready to go to high school, I said, Lord, God had granted me with a little popularity. Girls running around here talking about Chester. Now they were hollering out, Miss Hill. When I used to walk up to the party there, and they used to say, "Come on in, Juice. Come on in." I had a little. I walked with a big stick. Hey man. But I prayed to God. Going into high school, I said, God, use my popularity that people can be pointed to you. I said, use my influence. Yeah, although partying half the night, I'm about to share this thing, and if somebody tell it, I know who told it. Amen. Partying half the night, we wasn't old enough to buy alcohol. We'll go pull up on the side of the liquor store and find somebody here. Come here. Say, I give you $5 if you go in here and buy X, Y, and Z for me. One time, I'm share this, and if somebody tell them we on our way out here, one time I was with my homeboy and at the liquor store, somewhere we weren't supposed to be, and his car broke down. I said, Lord, if you get me up out of this, I promise I ain't coming back no more. I said, Lord, now I can't, because somebody from the church may roll up on me. I can't, they say, I wasn't preaching in. They say, Adrian, what you doing over here? I say, what you doing? What you doing? So I said, God, early on, I asked God, I said, God, whatever popularity you give me amongst my peers, use that through my life they'll see you. And that ought to be every Christian's prayer. That although you've been gifted to do some great things in the body of Christ, you come to realize that there's a power that's far greater than you. That Joseph realized that I got the gift, but God is the giver of the gift. And if Pharaoh wants true peace, he's got to know the God I serve. Joseph goes on and tells Pharaoh the interpretation of the dream. Says what this means. It means the skinny cows, the fat cows, the fruitful corn, and the barren corn. Let me tell you what it means. He says that means you're going to have 7 years of plenty. You're going to have 7 years of famine. There's going to come a time in the land of Egypt where y'all are just going to be overflowing with blessings. And then there's going to come a time where y'all are going to just be barely making it. And Joseph was able to speak with such power, as you get on down to verse number 33, that Pharaoh instructs his men and says, y'all, we need to get some men together. And we need them to go to every farmer in Egypt and tell them to give us 5% of every crop that they bring forth. Because Pharaoh says we got to do this for a couple of years while we got plenty. And I'm telling you that this principle that Joseph teaches today, you can apply it to your finances. That every time you get a raise, don't spend everything that come in. Put something up under the mattress. Y'all don't hear me, amen. He said, because just as sure as there's a plenty in the land, there will come a day where you're going to have to lean on that emergency fund. And that's good stewardship. You first pay God, then pay yourself, and then take care of everything else. But don't just throw it away on riotous living. This is what's going to happen. And Pharaoh looked around at that thing, Mrs. Hill, and said, I ain't never heard a man talk like this man, Joseph. There it is in the text. Verse number 38, and Pharaoh said unto his servants, can we find such a man as this man in whom the Spirit of God is? You see how God flipped that thing around? And here it is, Pharaoh doesn't even believe in Joseph's God. But Pharaoh has to acknowledge that Joseph is worshiping the God of the universe. And God will put you in position sometimes where you're the only one that can convince somebody else that God is still alive and on the throne. We had to travel yesterday, and I like to hear people's story. And how God can use what somebody else didn't get to be your blessing. And at the time, you didn't even know God was working in that thing. All you were looking for is a job. And God was able to take what you thought was just one thing, but when you get on down the road, you can look back over your life and say it wasn't nobody but God looking out for me, because God knew what I needed before I even needed it. Oh, hallelujah. And when you're walking in favor, God will use you to convince somebody else that God is still in the blessing business. That the way you live, the way you give, the way you smile when all hell is breaking loose in your life, God is only using you to show others that this is what faith in God can do. Hey. That's the fact about favor. And Joseph, fooling around, goes from the prison. And Pharaoh says, well, I'm going to put you in charge of everything that's under my jurisdiction. Ooh. God has a way that when you stay faithful to him and you walk in his favor, God will put you on the fast track. And folks will be looking around talking about how you got that. And some of us are foolish enough to say it's my education. Some of us are foolish enough to say that is who my family is, and it was who I knew. But good God, I was listening. I'm sharing this. I ain't tell Deacon Culpepper I was going to say this, but I'm going to share this now. Many folks don't know that Deacon Culpepper was the first black. Help me if I'm saying it wrong. Was he first black? Don't look at Miss Culpepper. She's going to help me out. She's going to help me preach the rest of this. Deacon Culpepper was the first black to work for Delta in Columbus. Deacon Culpepper was the first black. Now, Deacon Culpepper got that job because the United States, or somewhat because the United States government came out with this thing called affirmative action. Y'all don't hear me. I'm about to holler. I'm about to holler in a minute. And how Deacon Culpepper got that job. Deacon Culpepper got out of the Air Force. And then just fooling around, I'm pretty sure trying to keep Miss Culpepper straight. He had a hair full of head in. Look at him now. 50 years later. But anyways, Deacon Culpepper got the job because, now help me with this now, because Deacon Culpepper was a Boy Scout. And the man who was doing the hiring for Delta Airlines went and asked somebody else, who would you recommend to fill this job? And if I'm not mistaken, the lady who told that man was a cafeteria worker. A lady working in the cafeteria. You wouldn't even think she knew somebody who had the power to hire and fire folks for one of the biggest airlines in the United States of America. That the cafeteria worker recommended Willard Culpepper Jr., whole government name. And that's how he got the job. That you never know who God is working through to be your blessing. And when black folks didn't have nothing back in the day, but God has been good to us. That when we thought, when folks was trying to keep us out, God always had a way to say, that's the man. And you never know who God will use to extend the favor on your life. And then they told me yesterday while we were sitting at Wendy's, and Warner Robins said, and Deacon Culpepper used that job, and I'm pretty sure many others. The only reason I'm sharing this is because it's the story I know from yesterday. How he was able to use that job to help other black folks get on with Delta Airlines. And you can look back over your life of those folks who you didn't think even were thinking about you, were able to help you out. And here it is, Joseph now is in charge of everything in Pharaoh's house. He's second in command over the Egyptian welfare program. Y'all don't hear me. Started off by his brothers being low down to him. They wanted to kill him, and he ended up in jail. An old low-down woman told a lie on him, and he had to spend some years in jail. But now it is, God is bringing him back up. And he would have never gotten there if they wouldn't have put him in the ditch. He would have never gotten there if she hadn't told the lie on him. So that's why I say thank God for my mountains. I thank God for the trials in which he's seen me through. Because if I never had a problem in my life, I wouldn't know what faith in God could do. But through it all, I've learned how to trust in Jesus. Through it all, I've learned how to trust in God. And I've never met one problem that my God couldn't solve it. So through it all, God will always be good. Through it all, you will have to shed some tears late in the midnight hour. Through it all. But if you hold on to his hand, morning is on the way. And if you don't believe me, just ask a 33-year-old by the name of Jesus the Christ that they thought they killed him at 33, but didn't realize that they couldn't put a time limit on his life because on earth he was only 33. But they didn't realize that you can't kill from everlasting to everlasting. You know, that's why you just let folks, that's why just let folks keep picking on you. Because after a while, God going to tap them on the hand. Just let folks keep putting you down. Because after a while, if you're a child of God, God is going to shut it down and shut it down quick. Joseph is now in position to be a blessing to somebody else. I'm not preaching next Sunday, so I got to get it all out today. But I thank God for favor. I thank God for the facts of favor. That when God got you, he got you. Through the good and the bad, he got you. When your children acting a fool, if you trust him, he got you. When that loved one dies, he got you. When you don't know which way to turn, God got you. When you going through changes in life and you asking God, where did this come from? I just got over one thing and here it is, something else. God got you. And your tears, you got to be careful what you say around children. One of our children heard me telling them some tears of joy. The other day I heard him the other day telling them these are tears of joy. That's why I don't, sometimes you just got to let it out, because when you think about what God has done in your life, and even if God hadn't done anything, when you think about the possibility of the God in which we serve, sometimes you can't do nothing but cry. Because he would choose to work a miracle in our lives when we are the only people who have gone against his will. That everything else that he created does exactly what he told it to do. But we as human beings turn our back on him so many times. But yet and still, he keeps waking us up. When I get up in the morning, I say, Lord, you gave me another chance to get it right. And I say thank you. The invitation is extended. Acts about faith.